Good morning. Good morning, Rabbi Daniels.
Good morning.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. And I have to say it. Happy birthday, Rabbi Geffen.
Thanks, Rabbi Daniels. It's fun to spend my birthday this morning with you and with our community.
And with everybody joining us live.
Listen, this is literally the most exciting thing I'm doing today. So I'm thrilled to be celebrating it in some way with people beyond the folks who live in my home with me. So
that's great. I see that we've got the Cohens, Deborah and David are here, and I see Joyce Polikoff and June and Irva Mato.
Awesome. I'm so glad you all are here. Let us know that you're here. If you're watching us on Facebook, give us a Shabbat Shalom in our chat so we see you. We're in our interactive format again. We hope we have figured this out. So please do let us know you're here. Thank you for your Shabbat morning greetings, everyone. There is a link to the text sheet wherever you're watching us. Oh, thanks, Stephen. And thanks, Deborah. We have posted up links to the text sheet wherever you are. And if for whatever reason you can't find that link, you can go onto our website, www.nsci.org/Shabbat, and the link can be found there as well. So we're going to get started. We're going to get started in song. Hine Matov, please join with us. Hine Matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine matov u'manayim shevet achim gam yachad.
Right in the middle of page 1 of your prayer sheet, we call each other to worship, although we forget and sometimes do not listen. We call each other to worship with one breath, one song, one voice. At this sacred time, which is every time, in this sacred place, which is every place, with this sacred congregation, which is every congregation, we unfold together into the endless blessing of the eternal and call each other to worship. So on this sunny Shabbos morning, we'd invite you to take that deep breath. For you to find yourself on your seat, or maybe you're laying in bed or standing up because that's more comfortable for you. Let's continue together as we read the bottom of page 1. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said. Light blinded, we saw that inner and outer worlds are one as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava.
Let's join together in Shema on the top of page 2. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Le'olam Vaed. And we'll continue with Ve'ahavta. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinantam levanecha ve'dibarta habam ve'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת.
The words of Abraham Joshua Heschel, the bottom of page 2. The meaning of the Sabbath is to celebrate time rather than space. 6 days a week, we live under the tyranny of things in space. On the Sabbath, we try to become attuned to the holiness in time, to turn from the results of creation to the mystery of creation, from the world of creation to the creation of the world. On the next page, on this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer to life, to peace, and to joy. May we find true rest, holiness in our deeds, worth in our study of Torah. Let us feed on the love of goodness. Let us drink from the love of goodness. Restrain our thirst for excess and cleanse our hearts to serve life well. On this holy Shabbat, may we draw nearer in life, in peace, and in joy. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, v'lecha na'eh lehudot.
We'll join together in Sim Shalom, our prayer for peace this morning. Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom Tova Uveracha, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom Tova Uveracha. Ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la ya la la la. Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom, Sim, Sim, Sim Shalom Tova Uveracha. Baruch atah Adonai, Amvarech et Amo Yisrael Bashalom.
Amen. It said that on Shabbat there are 2 requests that we can make of God. The first being God's blessing of peace, shalom. We ask God to grant us a great peace on this morning, the end of this week, beginning of a new. And we ask God now for God's most awesome and precious gift of healing and wholeness. So as you think about your friends and your family, your neighbors, all of those people in your lives who are in need of healing this Shabbat, we'd invite you to either, if you feel comfortable, to write their name in our chat or to speak their name aloud in the quiet and the privacy of your own home. We think of them with you and we lift them in our prayer for healing. Baruch atah Adonai, Rofeh HaCholim. Blessed is our eternal God, provides healing and comfort to those who are in need. Amen.
Amen. Yehiyu leratzon imrei fi v'hagyon libi lefanecha Adonai tzuri Adonai tzuri Vegoali, words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable, be offerings to God, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. So in that spirit of the words that come out of our mouths, we'll move into our Torah study today. It's an appropriate segue given the topic we'll be exploring together. So again, we just want to make sure if you're with us wherever you are, you have the link. I'm going to actually repost it right now, just down in the feed, at least on Facebook. So in case you missed it, I'm going to try to repost it. I'm not really sure what's going to happen actually. See, it reposted some. Well, I think if you click that strange thing that I just posted, it may take you to the text sheet. Otherwise, just go to nsci.org/Shabbat and the text sheet is there. We will read the text out loud, but it may be helpful if you have them with you. But before we jump in, let's say the blessing that puts our minds and hearts in the framework of the study of Torah and busying ourselves in it. So please do join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kadishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
Amen. So we find ourselves today in Parshat Korach, in the Torah calendar cycle that NSCI finds itself in. There are, at this point in the summer, I think there are actually 3 different cycles of Torah that one might find themselves in. So depending on where you are and depending on your day-to-day, you might, scoot around to different Torah studies and you might experience 3 different parshiot. But we are on Parshat Korach. Korach, Rabbi Daniels and I were talking about this earlier. Korach, not the best guy. But he is one of us. So I guess I will, interestingly enough, this offers us one of very few sort of viewpoints into a critical analysis of one of our own. Korach is not on the other team. He's not Pharaoh. He's not Amalek. He's not Esau. He's in the family, literally in this case, in the family, but certainly within the framework of the us from the narrative view of Torah. And I want to invite us into that awareness before we jump into this, because, for some that may make this conversation easier. For others, and I would put myself in that boat, it may make the conversation much more complicated because we encounter a place of great dissonance and conflict internally in the family, as opposed to a place where we would anticipate that there would be conflict from an enemy, from an other. Thoughts on that, Rabbi Daniels, before we jump in?
I find in the world that we live, where I am in one camp and there are other people in another camp, how important it is for us to see fault within ourselves, within our own group, and for us to be able to call that out is incredibly challenging and incredibly hard. And thanks for framing it that way. It's a way that I haven't thought about until right now.
Yeah, it's I think if we were to do the kind of psychological analysis around it, we as sort of tribal humans, we like to make categories and we like to say, okay, so if it's not me, if it's not like me, then it's the opposite, it's the other. And in this case, it's tricky because, he's not really an other. He's not really the opposite. He's sitting at the dinner table with us.
Well, it feels better, right? In othering.
Yeah.
It's not me. I don't have to examine those flaws or those faults or the issues that I see in Korach in myself, right?
Correct. Yeah. I just want to, and just to sort of to be fair and true to like the critical analysis side from a scholar viewpoint, to come out of like psychosocial modern analysis and come back into like critical biblical text. That, you know, Korach is likely there as a foil against Moses, and ultimately this navigation, the whole sort of experience between the two of them, or really Moses and Aaron versus Korach and the group he kind of aligns with, ultimately serves to elevate the power and the centralized focus of the Mushite priests and the Aaronide priests, the Levitical line, which will then continue throughout really Jewish history. And this is the pivot point where we see other contenders fall by the wayside. So we see this intra-familial power struggle, but it has a larger narrative purpose in Torah. We're not really going to talk about so much of that today, but for anyone who's like watching us, who fancies themselves kind of a biblical scholar or interested in the literary side of the text, this is what's happening in that context. But I want to bring us into the text so we hear just, you know, what area we're going to focus on today. So we're going to look to the book of Numbers, chapter 16. We're only going to focus briefly on verses 1 through 3, simply for the purpose of elevating the issue with Korach as it first presents itself. So I'm just going to read that wherever you are. If you are with us, please feel free to follow along. Okay, so now took Korach, son of Itzchar, son of Kohat, son of Levi, along with Datan and Aviram, sons of Eliab, and On, son of Pelet, descendants of Reuben. And they rose up against Moses, together with 250 Israelites, chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute. They gathered against Moses and Aaron and said to them, they say in Hebrew, Rav lachem, you have gone too far, for all the community are holy, all of them, and God is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above God's congregation? So let's just talk for a minute about what's happening here. And if you're with us online, you can feel free to offer your own interpretations. We'll do our best on Facebook to try to respond to you then live in almost real time. We have a little bit of a delay to your thoughts, but it's a nice way of us being a little more interactive. So here we see Korach and these other folks issue a complaint, right? And their complaint is that Moses and Aaron are elevating themselves above everyone else, but they should know better because everybody's an equal in the eyes of God. This complaint in and of itself doesn't seem like so much of a problem. It seems like a fair complaint. Now it assumes a non-hierarchical structure. Maybe there's a problem with that, but in and of itself, it doesn't seem to be problematic. But it is problematic, and largely because of what comes before in the text, verses 1 and 2. So Rabbi Daniels, what are you thinking? What do you see as the problem there?
It's incredibly complicated for Moses and Aaron as leaders because these words are theirs.
Good. Yes.
Right? They have spent so much time to explain that you are the chosen people. There's a responsibility in that God has chosen us and brought us out of the land of Egypt to be our God. And so you have to live to a standard. And so here's Korach saying, okay, like you told me that we're all chosen folks. Who are you? Which is incredibly complicated for Moses and Aaron to respond.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's as one often does when they're trying to dismantle a power structure, they take the teaching or the baseline of the power structure that they take issue with and flip it on its head, essentially to tear it down. The real question, though, is what is their intent? You know, what's behind this complaint? Because what do we learn about Korach and the folks who are with him in verses 1 and 2. We learn that they're an elite group, and he has aligned himself with other elite folk, right? So who are they? They are chieftains of the community, chosen in the assembly, men of repute, okay? These are not everyday people. These are the elite. So what is happening, and this isn't to say that Moses and Aaron aren't elite as well, they certainly are. But what's happening when you see the lineup is you have one group of elite complaining about the power structure of a different group of elite. So this isn't a revolution of the people, and we could judge that one way or another, but this is a complaint of one elite group against another. And there we start to sort of open the door to the question of, well, does Korach actually really care about how everybody's treated in the eyes of the leadership? Or is this about his own inferiority complex in a power structure? And as if you were to go and read the rest of the parsha, in particular this narrative with Korach and Moses, you would see that that is in fact the case. So I want to just bring you now, we're going to move very quickly actually out of Torah and into rabbinic and Hasidic commentary. So come with me to a 16th and 17th century author, Yeshayahu Levi Horovitz. And he is the author of something called Shnei Luchot HaBrit, a great Hasidic focused commentary. So he writes the following. He says, jealousy caused Korach to robe himself in haughtiness, causing him to aspire to greatness. This is why the expression of the first three words in verse 1, now took Korach, should be understood as he took the fact that he was the son of Yitzchar into consideration and decided he was entitled to a higher rank than had been accorded him so far. We know that Bamidbar Rabbah quotes Rabbi Levi as saying that Korach considered the fact that he was the son of Yitzchar, which is another name for oil, and oil always floats to the top. Right, so this is just one, this is like the text that I like, the midrash that resonates with me, but this is just one of countless midrashic texts dating really from very, very early as 1st and 2nd century BCE, commenting on what are Korach's real intentions. Let's not think he's a man of the people, because he isn't. he's a man of his own self-interest in this case.
And he's riding on the coattails of those who came before him.
Yes.
Right? The implicit is, what has Korach done on his own?
Yes.
Right? What he demonstrated. He's boom, he's on this scene. He gets an entire Torah portion named after him. But what's his story beforehand other than he's a descendant of Reuben, right?
Good. Yeah, no, he just has the right lineage, hasn't been there doing the work, certainly in any equivalent way to Moses and to Aaron. And so now we'll get into why exploring any of this anyway. So Korach is elevated, I'm using that word kind of sarcastically, through Jewish tradition as the exemplar of something. And we recount him, but not for the good. So let's look at where this begins. Happens in Pirkei Avot. Many of you may be familiar with this text. It's Pirkei Avot 5:17. And it's talking about arguing, all right? Controversy, conflict. And ultimately says there are two different kinds of conflict. So here's the text. Every controversy that is in the name of heaven, the end thereof is destined to result in something permanent. But one that is not in the name of heaven, the end thereof is not destined to result in something permanent. Which is the kind of controversy that is in the name of heaven? Such was the controversy between Hillel and Shammai, two different rabbinic leaders of Mishnaic time. And which is the kind of controversy that is not in the name of heaven? Such was the controversy between Korach and all of the congregation. So what here do we find Korach is associated with? He's associated with controversy that is not for the sake of heaven, something that does not endure, something that is ultimately, ironically, forgotten. In Jewish text, we play with this idea of remembering and forgetting in the places of discomfort all the time. Remember to blot out the name of Amalek, for example. But again, he's an outsider. Here, we're brought into the inside to say Korach is associated with arguments that are not for the sake of heaven. And what is an argument that's not for the sake of heaven? His argument, his controversy. So he endures, but only as a reminder of that which doesn't endure. Fleeting, sort of the idea that something really has no purpose, no functionality in any ongoing way. Versus Hillel and Shammai, who are diametrically opposed in opinion every time in their arguments in Mishnaic text. And nevertheless, their arguments are raised up to say these are for the sake of heaven, and meaning their arguments, their opinions, both endure. They're codified actually in Talmud.
Not so much for the responses and the rulings that they make, but for the process.
Good.
Right?
Yeah.
To lift up the machloket shem shemayim, right? This controversy for the sake of heaven. That can be a model for us, regardless of whose opinion becomes law.
Correct. Exactly. And I don't know that we'll get there, but on the second page of these texts, there's a really famous narrative about some of their students and their legacy. But the text that I want to show us that I will likely end on is this Talmudic text from Sanhedrin. It is not a text that is popular. It's not a text that I think gets a lot of airtime, certainly in non-Orthodox circles, but I don't know why, because I think it should resonate deeply, at least it does for me. And this is actually about the students of Hillel and Shammai, so the generations that come after them, so that don't live in their lifetime, but that are essentially like students in their school, who the generations of their parents have gone to Hillel University or Shammai University, and now we're 10, 12, 20 generations out and watching what's happening to these newer generations. So in Sanhedrin, it teaches the following. It's been taught, Rabbi Yossi said, originally there were not many disputes in Israel, but one Beit Din or court of 71 members sat in the hall of hewn stones. That's like a court, okay? And two courts of 23 sat, one at the entrance of the Temple Mount and one at the door of the Temple Court. And other courts of 23 sat in all Jewish cities. So this is the judiciary system that exists at some point in the Talmudic memory, okay? Long ago, it recounts. Likely it's understanding its code for Mishnaic time, okay? If a matter of inquiry arose, so if a case was to be brought, the local Beit Din was consulted, and that makes sense. If they had a tradition thereon, they stated it. So if a pre-existing ruling on the matter existed in the local court, they would say what it was. If not, they went to the nearest Beit Din. And if that nearest Beit Din or court had a tradition thereon, they stated it. And if not, they went to the Beit Din situated at the entrance of the court. So they're going higher and higher and higher, right? They've moved from a local court to a state court to a federal court, all right? And he, who differed from his colleague, declared, thus have I expounded, and thus have my colleagues expounded. Thus have I taught, and thus have they taught. If they had a tradition thereon, they stated it, and if not, they all proceeded to the Supreme Court, basically, okay, to the Hall of Hewn Stones. There, they, the great Sanhedrin, the Supreme Court of the time, sat from the morning Tamid offering, that's a sacrifice offering that happens early in the morning, until the evening Tamid offering. On Sabbaths and festivals, they sat at the rampart. The question was then put before them. If they had a tradition thereon, they stated it. If not, they took a vote. Okay, so here is the shift, all right? If the majority voted unclean, they declared it so. And if they voted clean, they ruled it so. Okay, so they render a case, majority wins, meaning if there's no precedent anywhere else, all right? But, all right, so then fast forward to the contemporary time in which the Gemara is writing. But when the disciples of Shammai and Hillel, who the disciples had insufficiently studied, increased in number, disputes multiplied in Israel, and the Torah, the singular Torah, became two. So what do we have? We have an established civic judiciary structure, and it relies on what to work? What is it that allows it to function according to this text? And by the way, also in our world today, right? Knowledge of precedent, knowledge of the law. It doesn't mean unanimity. It just means understanding the school of thought in which one is educated. So, if one is educated in an interpretive law structure, then you're educated in it and you understand how that works. If you're a constitutionalist, you're educated in that and you know how it works, right? And this worked. And what was the case? Because of it, there weren't that many conflicts. There were conflicts, but they weren't that many. And basically, they could be taken care of in small scales, local levels. If for whatever reason it needed to escalate, it could, but there was a process, a navigation, the system worked. And even if it was brought all the way to the Supreme Court, to the great Sanhedrin, right? They had a process. So if there was no precedent, they would vote. But the assumption is they would vote based on the modalities of the schools of thought, which had been accepted and understood to hold the structure of the civic judiciary together. But then something happened. And what was it? These later generations became uninterested in learning about their history, where they came from, the modalities that held the structure together. And what was the result? There was no longer a unified law, Torah. It became two Torahs. And in a world of two Torahs, there is no consensus. There is no peace, right? Everything fell apart. How does that resonate for you, Rabbi Daniels? And if you're with us online, feel free, to share your thoughts as well. I'm curious.
I'm struck by the presentation of those pleading their case. Right? Very clearly, the real estate in Talmud, real estate in Torah matters, and they made the effort to say, "Thus I have expounded, and thus my colleagues have expounded." Right? It's not just about spewing your own argument at the wall for nobody to hear or listen, but it's understanding that there is an argument, that there are sides to this debate. It's important for us to, in acknowledging that you have an opponent in a debate or in a conversation, it doesn't lower your own argument, right? It doesn't diminish what you have to say, but it's a buy-in to the process, right? There are different arguments, and we leave it up to our system, rooted in Torah, rooted in law and tradition, to make the majority decision based on what's presented, rather than just each person yelling at the wall, right? I think that's a powerful image.
Absolutely. And I think also that the understanding that there are sort of like order of operations and accepted rules for the structure. So boundaries. But the only way those boundaries are held is that people know about them, have studied them, are invested in them.
Show
Presumably their own and the other. Again, these are internal in the same system. This is an intrafamilial construct, not a, well, these are our rules and then these are the other nation's rules. This is all, we're all in the same team, even though there are subsets, right? So the idea of that unity can still hold amidst diversity, if people understand whatever generation they find themselves in, that there is a structure, they're beholden to it, and they are willing to learn and be responsible for what they're carrying. It isn't just about them and their opinions in a given moment. Because when it becomes just about them and their opinions in a given moment, uprooted entirely or severed from everything that's led to them, right? The center doesn't hold anymore. Everything is loosed out into the world. And then you see two Torahs. Then you see no longer one nation. You see two. It's no longer the same family. It's enemies.
And in that breakdown, disputes multiplied in Israel.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. So the system, everything fell apart, for me, I hope this resonates for everyone who's listening about this moment in time in our world. It's not just this moment in time, it's actually been happening for a long time here in our country and in our world. But this idea of, the disputes that have multiplied and the erosion of trust and discourse, and a willingness to know history, a willingness to know what has brought this to be. And this is true, whatever side one finds themselves on. It's true on all, it's true for everyone. Just like it is in the text, you'll note of sort of from a rabbinic context, it's interesting because the Torah doesn't, the Talmud doesn't like to vilify anything about Hillel. They're happy to vilify Shammai from time to time, and he doesn't get a lot of wins, but in this case, they're both complicit. They're both responsible for the deterioration of this system because neither party was interested in learning what they needed to learn before they took it to court.
And it's not, in the end, it's not about Hillel or Shammai or
Correct.
their debates, right? It's about the breakdown of the fundamentals of a system that's been established.
Yep, exactly.
Which is the trauma, which is the major issue.
Yeah. So I hope that this is something that resonates deeply for everyone, and helps us kind of think about how and what we're navigating in our own communities, our own families, when there is controversy, when there is diversity, and what's at stake. Because what's at stake is the rupturing of the family. What's at stake is the rupturing of the community. One family to two families. One community to two families, one America to two Americas, one world to two worlds. And the price to be paid for that is exponentially higher than the discomfort that comes from disagreement, and a willingness to accept that sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. But that doesn't mean you can't be part of a family. That doesn't mean you can't be part of a community. So I hope that's something that sticks with you. We're not going to go into the other two texts, but I just will bring you to them because they're corrections. The Talmud doesn't love this Sanhedrin text. It goes out of its way to sort of not focus on the failures of Beit Hillel and Beit Shammai and tries to elevate them. And there are two examples that are given, one from Eruvin, probably the most famous one, about arguments for the sake of heaven, and then another one from Yevamot, which just talks about, well, what does it mean to tolerate controversy in family structures, in civic structures, in communal structures, and what examples were given then. And those are certainly more productive, proactive ones. But we go back to Korach to say, what's his legacy? what brought him into the argument in the first place, it wasn't actually that he was concerned about a matter of principle. It was his own self-interest. He severed himself from the continuity of the tradition. And what was the result? Well, the result is he's swallowed up in the ground, literally, and all the folks who align with him. But more than that, he goes down in history as being the reminder of that which is fleeting and unlasting. And I think in that there's a powerful reminder for everyone. I just want to note, there's just thanks for your kind words, guys. Sorry, I saw your comments. We're glad you enjoyed the teaching.
Deborah and Dan and Lindsay, my mom.
Hi, Mindy. So we hope you enjoyed this Torah study this morning. And we hope for all of us that we'll be able to enter into controversy when we do with our eyes toward heaven. And how might that shift it for us and everyone we encounter?
Amen. As one family of families, we acknowledge our connection. We acknowledge one another as mourners at this time. We remember all of our loved ones who have died recently in these past 30 days. Remember Judy Berger, Ralph B. Block, Linda S. Elbaum, Alana Grunberg, Sherwin Jack Koloff, Harold Rabin, Erwin Mark Rosenblum, Stephanie Sherman, Richard Siegel, Alexander Smolovsky. We remember our loved ones whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of their passing, is this Shabbat. Jane Adler, Susan Deering Applebaum, Bessie Barkley, Frida G. Burke, Dr. George Borden, David Brodsky, David Brofman, Marge K. Tung, Roberta S. Kaplan, Paul M. Chase, Harry W. Chernick, David Cooper, William Dolger, Barry Effris, David Ender, Ann Epstein, Susan Dale Feltman, Edwin Fishman, Dean Fortnoff, Bruce Gannick, Harry Glick, Suzanne Crown Goodman, Lucy Zach Gore, Florence P. Greenberg, Mildred G. Halpern, David Helfer, Melvin Hertzberg, Harold S. Himmel, Joel Klein, Paul Krause, Esther Cromer, Rose Buddy Leventhal, Darlene Levine, Fran Levine, Lillian Levine, Rose Listner, Henry Lowenstein, Richard Mandel, Bess Marcus, Beatrice Mattinson, Fanny Meltzner, Richard H. Minnow, Helen Moroff, Orrin Nafak, William David Norman, Hyman A. Pierce, Esther Garberport, Evelyn Ressler, Morris L. Rosenbaum, Sherwood Darrell Ross, Hortense Rothschild, Ernest Allen Rudder, Evelyn Schiller, Sarah Elizabeth Zabolski, Florence Sherman, Max Silver, Casey Smith, Sandra Smith, Joel Spitz, Roberta Bobby Burke Strom, Julian F. Tuber, Matilda Vogel, Victor Weiner, and Sarah Wolf. We'll remember them as we do with words of Mourner's Kaddish. They can be found on page 6 of your prayer packet for this morning. Itkadash Shemei Rabbah, Alma Divara Chirite V'Yamlich Malchute, Chayechon V'Yomechon, Chayedcho Beit Yisrael, Ba'galau V'Zman Kariv Imru, Amen. Hey Shmei Rabbah Mevorach, Olam Ulmei Almaya, Yitbarach V'Yishtabach V'Yitpa'ar V'Yitramam V'Yitnaseh, V'Yitadar V'Yitalev V'Yitalal, Shmei Dekudsha Barichu, Ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru, amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shemaya, chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Zichronam levracha, may all of their memories be for an abiding blessing. Say together, amen. Just a word. We hope that you will conclude Shabbat with us tonight at 7:30 with Havdalah. That will be led by Cantor Alex Kurland and our summertime rabbinic intern, Aaron Binder Kurland. We're excited to have you on Facebook leading us all in Havdalah. We'll conclude with a song this morning.
Let's sing Oseh Shalom. Oseh Shalom bimromav, hu Yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom, everybody.